Hello everybody, thank you for joining us. Today we're going to do a sketch of a figure holding a sword or any object with two hands but seen from the side. But this will also comprise a sketch of one of my favorite characters, and that is, I choose to do this with Conan the Barbarian. I believe we do have a Conan the Barbarian sketch that we have put out previously, but that was a speed art. But here we are using this posture, this position, and we're using Conan the Barbarian to illustrate. So those are the pair of hands that will grasp the handle of the sword that can go through like that. We can put that out right from the outset, and then let's have this going right up. We will decide on the style of the sword in a second. Then we have the shoulder set right here. Of course, the middle body here. Let's actually show a little hunch. So hunch in this particular pose. If you have seen any material from Conan the Barbarian, whether it is comics, whether it is one of the movies, this sword, this particular pose or position or posture where the sword is grasped by both hands and stationed right in front is a very, very popular and often used posture. So there is the other hand. There's this hand, which will be, well, now this hand will be in the forefront first, and that hand, so the back of the hand and the fingers of this hand will be visible. So let us now, around this frame that we have put together, let us try to see if we can put some muscle around this, because if there's anything that stems from this character, it is muscle. And Conan the Barbarian, of course, portrayed somewhat differently, I guess, over the years. But while we are doing this, why not? I've just decided to actually use a pen to outline the primary structure here. So, as I mentioned, that it is, I think, it will be worthwhile to tap into a brief history of this character. And when I speak about history, I will also speak about the person who created this character, and that was one Robert E. Howard. So here we have to make sure that the forearm view is in full swing. So like the inside of the forearm. So that is the area that goes into the bicep. And here, of course, the back of the arm and the tricep is visible, which we just put out right there just for a quick and easier identification. And as I was saying, that Conan the Barbarian was created by the great, well, in terms of pop culture, I'm specifically mentioning Robert E. Howard, who excelled in stories. So there we have the hand, We could also put a knuckle set like this and then start off. We can put a bell shape and then a knuckle set, and then we could start putting together the finger set like that. So that is one hand already grabbing that handle. Let's thicken the handle a little bit. And the other hand has to be essentially in this pose at joining, but seen from that angle. So what we'll do is an oval and oval, and there is the thumb, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one is a tad bit easier in my estimate to put down than this, but again, everybody's cup of tea is a little different. So essential man wristbands, and let us put a handle right there, some sort of handle, some sort of sword, and let's just make the sword fairly straight and generic, because Conan doesn't really have any particular sword. So as I was mentioning, and we'll do some inks here because it's Conan the Barbarian now. We'll do some inks and see if we can finish this off quickly. So light source from above, directly from above, and we'll just throw in some tones quickly. So Robert E. Howard created this character, I think, all the way back in the 30s, 1930s. And Howard's works, of course, he even stated, were inspired by prominent writers like Conan Doyle, Jack London, who had quite a few novella about the wilderness and adventure in a more challenging backdrop. And even Rudyard Kipling's, again, Kipling's many works, like Jungle Book alone, that speaks of a brush with nature, were very inspirational to Howard, who of course incorporated many different elements into his works when he wrote Conan the Barbarian's stories. Now, these stories were essentially not for kids. So whether it was a comic book format, whether it was a newspaper format, magazine, or novels, whichever printed form it was, my opinion is that Conan the Barbarian stories were never, ever geared for kids. They were violent. Yes, there was a lot of sword and sorcery going on, but there was also disturbing imagery, as is seen from his various bad guys. For example, one of the main antagonists throughout the Conan books is the sorcerer with violent origins, Toth Amon, and he has been tapped into heavily in Conan's books, and ever since Conan's birth in the fictional land of Cimmeria, he has been hounded by this sorcerer who also cannot seem to get the best of Conan the Barbarian, who is really a barbarian with a sword, but he has a willpower and fighting prowess that is unparalleled. So we are doing what you call quick inks here. We have already tapped into some factors that can help put together a figure holding a sword from this angle, but we are also doing a little extra justice here by just throwing in some ink so that Conan the Barbarian can look a little better. Now Conan's stories, all of them are, I will have to say that I have not read a bad Conan the Barbarian story. I'm not talking about the movies, because movies are, after all, not necessarily based off the source material in all accuracy. There's always compromises here and there, so I won't speak for the movies, but for the published material, whether it is, the fascinating thing is that whether it is the comics or the novels, which were at to great length illustrated by the great Frank Frazetta, who was a staple artist for characters like the Barbarian and other characters. Now, Robert E. Howard's works are, again, they are compared, like this character I'm only talking about is compared to Flash Gordon. He's compared to say Tarzan heavily, because there are like shades of, let's say that if Conan were to like lose these bands, he would be a virtual Tarzan. But the beauty of it is that in spite of that, he has a character of his own. He has a method of his own. He is this conflicted and very driven character who can pull off survival unlike anybody, and that is why he makes for a good opponent even against sorcerers. For instance, in one of these stories, a sorcerer who sacrificed the innocent people to use their souls. It's a very hackneyed premise, but it was portrayed very interestingly. So when Conan the Barbarian comes for him, it was shown in the story that the sorcerer, although he had like spells at his disposal which could have stopped the barbarian from hurting him, he was so overwhelmed by with fear that the barbarian, who is fabled to be unkillable, is coming for him, that he kept reciting the wrong spells, and in his fear, the barbarian eventually reaches him and he manages to kill him. So, but very interestingly shown, even though this was just a simple state of the art, though, comic, which was drawn by John Buscema, who is also another great who has done a lot of commendable Conan work over the years, in the 80s, and that was when Conan was published by Marvel Comics. And now, recently, after a stint with some of the publishers, Conan actually returns to Marvel Comics. So this is just to update you. So any fans who have any interest in following up with the character and wondered where he went in the last decade, he's always been around. His stories have always been published and like republished because they are a lot of fun. And the character himself, like, he's not that essential heroic good guy. Like, he's a conflicted character who will get in your face, at the drop of a coin. And he sometimes, yes, he is shown to be considerate because his parents passing, pretty much like Batman, put him on a collision course with the people who did wrong to his tribe and to his parents and to his home, to his childhood. So he is conflicted, but he is ruthless. He is single-minded. He will have questionable methods, and of course it depends on the publisher which has tapped into the character, and accordingly the stories begin to flow. So I think that Marvel is currently doing a good job with them. Interestingly, they have shown, I think they're going into a storyline where they're showing that Conan, while going through the ravaged landscape of Cimmeria in his timeline, somehow ends up crossing a timeline into modern day Las Vegas. That's a very interesting premise, and he of course is now being hooked up with some other main Marvel characters, and it'll be very interesting to see how this master of the sword and somebody with natural survival skills measures up to some modern day heroes or modern day characters. So it's an interesting, it is a very interesting concept there, and one that I might also personally end up checking. So there we have it, some casually put in crosshatch and tones. I've tried to give you a background of Conan, not just because I think that it's cool to know it. I think that you should check out at least one Conan story if you've never checked out any. And I think that you will be happy that you did, because it is just good old-fashioned hardcore fun. So thank you for watching. Please do subscribe, keep in touch. We put out content pretty much every day, and so let's keep sharing ideas. Have yourself a wonderful day.